hang-on-the-back filters. They are one of the most popular filtration options for a powered filter in modern-day aquariums. Maybe the most sought after and go-to because they typically see the most innovation and the most change in a more rapid format. But I'm here to tell you, they suck. Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and today we're talking about hang-on-back filters, like this guy right here. This is a Title 55. Well, for the curious, they'll see that there's something going on here. This is an augmented Title 55, courtesy of a friend of the channel, but that's not the important part. We're here to talk about hang-on-back filters. Hang-on-back filters are a more recent, in the grand scheme of things, invention of our hobby, courtesy of the magnetic impeller. That little thing that sits inside the motor, that's inside the casing. One sec. You know, when you get one of these out of your hang-on-back, it's got the little fin bit in there, usually a magnetic impeller. The most obvious ones, of course, being in our aqua clears. There's a big problem with these things, and that's just the start of why hang-on-back filters are not as great as we think they are. Because of the way they're designed, there's a magnet that sits around the outside of the impeller itself, and it sits in the housing, it uses that magnet to spin, and thus to move water when under power. This all seems great, right? There's a problem. Because that magnet is very thin and the way that the actual entire motor is designed, small amounts of damage, like a scratch on the magnet, or a crack, more importantly, in the magnet when you're trying to, say, service it and clean it, it's actually surprisingly easy to cause. And the second you have that crack, it's dead. You need a new impeller. Problem with that being, impellers are kind of expensive. So all of a sudden, this really awesome and often thought of as durable and maybe like the king of filters starts costing money quicker than we might think if we're not quite careful when we're servicing these things. But that's not all. There's a lot more problems than just that. Here is a well-used and old top fin hang-on-the-back filter for you. Yeah, I know. It's a little grungy. I pulled it out of storage. Almost all of our hang-on-backs have this design, right? Chamber that sits on the back of the tank, little lip that goes in, here's where the water comes out. We usually have an intake tube. There are some fancier ones that add a skimmer like the Title, or there's a newer version that has like its own skimmer attachment. Those are their own problems, and we'll get to them shortly. But this design was engineered with one thing in mind, and it's under the hood here. You see that little notch right there? Goes across. You see, when these things are designed, they have been engineered, in many cases, not all, to hold cartridges. You see, a lot of those manufacturers thought, oh, well, how do we make this effective filter continuously make us money? Well, what if the filter media is a replaceable cartridge and we encourage our hobbyists to replace that cartridge every month? Genius. Continuous income, right? Here's the problem. Most of us experienced hobbyists chuck those bad boys out right away and replace them with sponges or physical media or whatever the heck, maybe some carbon for chemical filtration. The engineering on these is designed with those cartridges in mind. And the second you remove the cartridges, you start impeding or messing with the way the water flow is meant to happen inside from here out, right? And it comes all the way from here. It's supposed to come in through the impeller, flow over, go through, and out. But when we start stuffing it full of sponge and other things, what ends up happening is bypass. That's right. That thing that a lot of people complain about in like the Title filter, it actually happens in nearly every hang-on-back design because we, humans, typically go and augment our little hang-on-back filter, and the second we start augmenting it, we mess with the inherent flow design of the machine, causing restrictions. And water will always take the path of least resistance, which means it will do everything it can to bypass all of our filter media, all of these restrictions in its way, and go out quickly. So even the lauded AquaClear, which everybody loves to say there's no bypass in an AquaClear, not true. Actually, yes, there is and can be bypass in an AquaClear. It is certainly not as big an offender as some of the other filters out there, but just keep in mind that all hang-on backs, all of them with this design, The second we start augmenting them and trying to make them more effective, we're going to cause bypass. And even some of them in their inherent design cause bypass on their own. So they all of a sudden become less efficient than some of those air-driven rigs, because the air-driven rigs naturally create flow that goes through the media at all times in order to go up through the uplift tube and escape. Whereas this is using a powered motor to pull water up, push it through the chambers, and then all of a sudden, if the media is in some kind of alignment that is not perfect, or what have you, we will start getting bypass. That's right. It can happen even in the best of these. Now that's not all. The design, it's important, right? We talked about this lip. This is where our water comes out. And it usually has this little chute designed to kind of skim the water out, right? Make it not just a drop off or just shot straight out. And let me give you another example with the Tidal. The Tidal, a lot like the AquaClear, has a much more distinct kind of ramp, so that it's trying to get the water as flat as possible. Now here's the thing, if you don't keep that water level relatively high in line with this ramp, and all of a sudden you have water dropping off, or maybe you need a species that inherently needs the water level lower because they like to jump a lot, maybe you're trying some other kind of look for your aquarium, you keep a lot of mystery snails, you want eggs to be laid, whatever the heck that may be, this blade of water that comes out is amazing when it's sitting flat. It creates this wonderful turbulence across the water, beautiful flow. But the second we alter that, now that water just falls off like a waterfall and becomes noisy. One of the biggest complaints in the sponge filter video was talking about the noise that sponge filters make. These bad boys, especially ones with skimmers, if your water level is not kept absolutely immaculate, are very loud. These can get excessively loud. Now, granted, if you like that kind of waterfall-y type noise, you're that kind of person that wants that beautiful outdoor pond with little waterfalls and stuff, you're not going to care. But for those people who want their aquariums as quiet as possible, that's a problem. Now, is it as bad a problem as some of the other things that are inherent to the design of these filters? No. But still something we need to consider. Let's talk about the next part. Go under the hood of this bad boy. Our top fin doesn't have a tray because it's designed for a cartridge system. But when we get into the filters that are not designed to use cartridges, we have a tray, not usually something quite as robust as the one here on this Tidal. We usually have some kind of flimsy thing that's designed to hold a sponge and some media or packets of different filtration, carbon, whatever it may be. The problem is that for most of those that are out there, the AquaClear is a really good example of this. They're quite flimsy, and if you overload them or just move them in the wrong way, they're surprisingly easy to break. And all of a sudden, now you need a replacement part. While the good news about most hang-on backs is that replacement parts are relatively easy to source, the big problem comes in this. They get expensive fast. Sponge filters are not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, and if you break one of the casings, yeah, it might cost you another $15, but you're getting a brand new filter. You break the impeller, the motor, or the external casing on one of these, and you might as well buy an entirely new filter. And the problem is, this thing is anywhere between $50 and $100, depending on the size of the filter you're buying. Sometimes even more, depending on the manufacturer. Yeah, Waze, I'm looking at you, you overly priced, weird-looking hang-on back. But here's the thing. There's another problem with this inherent design. Now, not with the Tidal. I want to show something, right? Tidal. See how it flexes? Good. Flex beautiful. AquaClears, that top fin I showed you earlier, and a number of other things that have tried to clone the AquaClear, use a very rigid, hard plastic instead of this more flexible and malleable plastic. And the problem is that plastic is so rigid that not a lot of stress can hit that plastic, and it will cause a crack. And the second you crack this casing, it is game over. You need to replace the entire thing, and often replacing the body of the filter is only about $10 or $20 cheaper than buying an entirely new filter. Why would you buy the replacement part? See the problem? Because of the cost of these things, when you do have some semblance of repair, assuming parts are available, For the longest time, it was hard to get parts for a lot of the hang-on backs out there, and now it's really just kind of one or two brands make their parts available. It's easy to break small bits of these filters and potentially make it so that either it no longer can function, or it's just not as effective as you want it to be. And when you're spending $50, $75, $100 or more dollars on one of these filters, you really want this thing to last you quite a while. And they are designed with some semblance of frailty in mind. And I know people are going to be like, "Oh, they're not, Bentley." They kind of are. When you look at, especially the ones that have cartridge systems, they are designed to fail on you in some way, shape, or form. Mostly the cartridges, but things like the Aqua Clear, they're designed in certain ways, but they offer all these replacement parts for a reason. It's a really good revenue source for the manufacturer. And when manufacturing makes lots of parts available and they are just expensive enough to be worth a lot of money to the manufacturer, but maybe just cheap enough if somebody's really not trying to replace an entire filter, they're willing to get a replacement part, that's where the problem comes in. They are almost literally designed to milk extra money out of us aquarists. And when the base filter already costs quite a lot of money, we should expect a lot more durability out of them. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about, we will laud these things because they don't necessarily need a ton of power. They have high flow rate, and often servicing them can be relatively fast, especially the ones with trays. It's just this, pop the tray out, go clean your media, bring the tray back, pop it in, bam, you're good to go, right? Sponges are pretty much just as fast, if not faster, to service once you get used to them. And considering we care so much about the size of this media bin and how much extra room it's got, and it gives me this and that and that, if you actually think about the cost versus what you're getting, the only thing that really matters is that flow rate. And then, if that were the case, you'd be better off just getting a power head and putting it on a sponge filter. And all of a sudden you have something that's cheaper, easier to angle however you want. It's not a big, ugly box that will sit on the back of your tank. So if you want something that's aesthetically pretty, it's a little easier to manipulate things than it is this giant box. It's a little easier to hide the sponge with the power head than it is the big hang-on back filter. What I'm trying to say is, even though a lot of us love a hang-on back filter, they're not as great as we often think they are. They have as many, if not more, negatives than every other filter option that is out there. So, do you live your life by these things? Do you have tons of them like I do? I have a number. I mean, in this fish room alone, I have 4 hang-on back filters that are going right now. There's an Aqua Clear 110 behind me. There's a Tidal over there. There's a Magnum Hot over there, and there will be another hang-on back down this way somewhere. I have other hang-on backs all over, so the Penguin 350B, and there's that too, right? A lot of these also have some kind of stupid gimmick to them, like the bio wheel, or the this, or the that, because they're all trying to do something interesting. The skimmer unit on the Tidal that ends up making a horrific amount of noise if you're not perfect with your water. The gimmicks don't help because rarely are these companies actually innovating and making something that is a significant increase from a filter that's basically dominated since the 1980s, the Aqua Clear. And it's not perfect. So that, my friends, is why your hang-on back filter sucks. Now, do you use a lot of hang-on backs? Do you love hang-on backs? Do you think I'm wrong? Or are you one of the church of the old school faithful, only air-driven filtration? Maybe you are a lord of the sump, and you think that all others should bow before your might and power. Whatever it is, let me know in the comments down below. Did I miss something? Do I have something egregiously wrong? I want to hear from you guys. That's the fun part of this series. Next week, we'll be going over all the reasons why these are actually pretty amazing for what you're getting and why they're a great piece of technology for your aquarium. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, consider sharing it with a friend who might be considering doing their first aquarium or buying a hang-on back, whatever it may be. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, maybe even ring that little notification bell. That's the easiest way to help your friendly neighborhood fish tuber. And as always, my friends, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.